Christian and Protestant. And I'm the pastor at the First Presbyterian Church in Bryan, which is just about 3 blocks down the street.
Okay.
4.
And then the other 4 panelists, if you would, just raise your hand. One of the 3. You may go.
I'm Al Schaefer, and unlike Pastor Foote, I am not a minister. I'm a member of Congregation Beth Shalom over on Coker Street. I'm a former president of the congregation, and I guess that's the reason I've been asked to speak about Judaism. Reform Judaism is one of several branches of Judaism. There's also the ultra-Orthodox, Orthodox, and conservative branches. The Reform branch, I think, is probably the one that probably gone the furthest in attempting to accommodate to Christianity. And we've modified our practices, particularly our religious services, in that respect. And I'll say more later.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shima Mohajeri, and I represent the religion Islam. I'm a Shia Muslim, and I'm from Iran. And I'm also a lecturer at Texas A&M University. I'm teaching architectural studios, and also I'm a PhD student in architecture.
Daryl Thomas. I'll be speaking about Buddhism. I am not a leader. As for lack of a better term, I would be what is considered a layman. I'm just a practitioner.
Okay. And so now we have questions from students who have been handed a little slip of paper. If you would like to be the first, you may raise your hand. Cardacia, go ahead.
I'm Cardacia, and my question is to whoever would like to go first is, what trait, characteristic, belief sets your reason apart from other religions?
Can you restate that one more time, slower?
What trait, characteristics, beliefs sets your religion apart from other religions?
I don't know whether, tell me your name.
Michael?
Yeah, I don't know whether Michael just wants us to, has a desire for us to go in the same order, or I've just randomly chosen, but Michael, I'll honor that point, okay? In terms of Christianity, the trait or characteristic that sets us apart from other religions, and I think I would probably use in the dictionary a word that is the word distinct. Because if you're distinct, it means you've got some qualities that set you apart a little bit, but it doesn't mean that you're not connected to other people. And so I wouldn't want to say that, speaking about being a Presbyterian or a Protestant or a Christian, going up that ladder, that we would be set apart to where Christians, Protestants, or Presbyterians think themselves better than anybody else, or that God thinks us that we're better. But our faith family tradition is descended from Judaism, and the early church, which for several centuries was the primary church was in the Mediterranean area, and then the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox divided east and west. And then that was about 1000, and then in the 1500s there was this Protestant Reformation, and so the Presbyterians emerged out of that. But in all of that, what makes us distinct probably is the understanding that this character, Jesus of Nazareth, was a prophet in the line of the prophets of Judaism, and that he had special characteristics as a teacher and a prophet, and in his death, and following his death and his resurrection, which means however you understand that, his life beyond death with God, that it has a transforming influence on the way people's lives can be lived as citizens in God's world. Mr. Molly, is that adequate? Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
The same question to Mr. Martinez.
Kind of a tough one, but not really. My understanding of Buddhism being set apart from others, our traits and the others, is that we have no God. We're not monotheism, we're not polytheists. Essentially, Buddhists are atheists, which is not really kind of a hard one to explain. Since atheism isn't really a religion, it's just a belief that there is no higher powers, because we look within ourselves for everything. Just have an outward answer.
Would one of y'all like to go next?
Would you like to go? Would you like me to go?
I want her to go.
I want before I answer this very important question, I'd like to tell the students and your teacher that I am overwhelmed by the fact that you're studying this subject. When I was your age, we had nothing like it whatsoever. And even when my daughter was in 6th grade here in Bryan, there was nothing like it. And I hope you find this interesting. It's difficult to really talk. These matters are very weighty, and I'll do my best to explain it to you in a way that makes some sense. I want to also emphasize a point that Reverend Foote emphasized in talking about some of the essential features of Judaism. I want in no way to convey to you the idea that we consider our religion superior to any of the other religions discussed today and to any religions that you and your parents subscribe to. Judaism has a long history. We are probably the first religion that practiced or created monotheism. It may not sound very important today, but at the time, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, when we created the idea of monotheism, everybody was polytheistic. All the tribes and cultures were polytheistic. Why was this important, the idea that there's only one God? Well, there were several ideas that came from this concept. One is that human beings are made in the image of God. And that was a very important idea because it meant that all people, regardless of their race and whatever, have something of the divinity in them, and that therefore are entitled to dignified treatment and fair treatment, and every person is valuable, even people of low status. And that is a revolutionary concept, and it still applies today in our society, and it plays a part in our election politics. I don't want to get into that, but if you follow the election, it plays a part in election politics. And therefore, this concept of equality on this basis, one of the foundation pillars of democracy, and one of the foundation stones of Jefferson's Declaration for Independence. The other idea about that I'd like to emphasize about Judaism is that although we believe in heaven and although we believe in hell, although we believe that good people with righteous lives go to heaven and sinners go to hell, we do not make this a fundamental part of our religion. Instead, we emphasize the idea that given the brevity of life and how much change takes place, it is very important to make heaven on earth. And that means that we all have responsibility to do whatever we can, as little as we can, or as much as we can, depending upon our station in life, on our resources, to make life better for our loved ones, for our neighborhood, for our community, and no small deed in this regard is unimportant. And I think this idea of bringing heaven to earth is extremely valuable for the idea of making life better for successive generations to come. Are there any questions? You don't have a question?
No, sir.
Okay.
But I would like to pass it on
To Sheba. Sheba.
to Sheba.
Well, as you know, Islam is the last religion of, if we believe in the Abrahamic lineage, Judaism, Christianity is part of that lineage, and because Islam is the last religion, and the prophet of Islam is going to seal the whole mission of bringing in the message of God and the Word of God to the people. So it was considered to be the completion of all these other religions. So there was no difference in terms of the core message of God, in terms of passing it down from the prophets to the people. It's just a matter of, because this is going to be the last word, it needs to be preserved, the book, and it needs to be uncorrupted, and then it needs to be completed and be at the same level as the people that are going to be in this world till the end of the world. So it should be I would say intellectual, and also this work, both intellectual and the earthly level. I mean, it should have a plan for this life, and also it should have a plan and program for the hereafter. So I would say that the only distinction would be in terms of perfect. The God says, I've perfected the religion for you, and I'm going to complete my favor upon you as people by bringing in this religion. And it's a kind of mission and favor that God initiated, since Adam. And Adam and Muhammad as the last prophet is going to be, the first and last. So if there was a message in the beginning, it needs to be completed in the end. So that's just, I would say, Islam is only about completing the whole message that was conveyed through the other religions. So, I think that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question to ask? Listen.
I would like you to name one major contribution of your religion to history, and why would it be so important to history? Anybody like to go first?
As we know, we have different sciences and also art that was being worked out by Muslim scholars and artists and architects. So we have medicine. We have different practitioners. In medicine, we have artists. We have in the field of geometry, in the field of algebra, physics, astronomy, and I can name a couple of those scholars in that field. And what is important is how, since the Greek time, we have Aristotle, we have Plato, all these philosophers, since the ancient time. And what happens, they, Muslim scholars got those important texts and messages written down by Greek Western scholars. They translated them, and they started to work on them, and invented a couple of things, and as I said, in algebra and geometry, with chemistry, physics, and the rest. So, and also I'm an architect, so I know a couple of more things about how, Muslim architects and artists had so many innovations in that regard, like the mosques, the domes. Again, it's very cross-cultural. Like they got so many ideas from the Middle Ages, before them, from Roman and Greek architecture, those kind of ideas, and they mixed it up with their own beliefs and belief system and their skills, and then they contributed to the human civilization. So I would say it was not just a unique innovation of the Muslims. It was, they inherited so many ideas, so many scientific ideas, cultural ideas from the rest of the world, and then they, like from China, from India, from, as I said, from Greece, from Rome, from today's Italy. They got all those ideas, and then they worked on it and sort of
Improved or enhanced
yeah,
it.
improved and developed those ideas, and got to the point that they designed things, they innovated other scientific things. So yeah.
I want to remind you all that if they say something interesting, how do we appreciate that? Yeah, so show them that. Come on now, we have some expression, that we can still exhibit. It's just because they're here doesn't change anything. Okay, all right. So good.
I would like to pass it on and say, answering off the same question.
Okay.
One major contribution to history.
As Shimon was saying, in a very relevant way, which she mentions architecture, algebra, medicine, science, I think that I would talk about not just Christianity or Protestantism, but my small branch of that family, the Presbyterians in particular, in a little different way than she spoke. One of the contributions that we have coming through where our branch of the faith or our family originated in Switzerland and then in Scotland is the way the United States government is shaped with a separation of powers between the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, and the way we elect representatives is in large part patterned after the Scottish Presbyterian Church. And when some of y'all have several globes here, if you see where Scotland is in the northern part of the main British island there, Scotland was one of the poorest countries in the world at its time in the 1500s. And as Dr. Schaefer was saying about Judaism, while Presbyterians didn't always practice the Christian faith in the best fashion, they could be pretty ruthless to each other and to other people. When the leaders of that group migrated to the United States and the 13 colonies, in working with other people in America who were not Presbyterians, in large measure, the United States in 1789 adopted several measures from the Scottish Presbyterian Church that became the structure of our country today as we know it.
I would like to pass it on to the next religious.
This one's going to kind of skip around a little bit. It's not a whole lot to do with Buddhism and
It's the major contribution.
the major believe it might have been in 641 BCE that Buddhists got together with a bunch of warlords, and they helped create the Tang Dynasty, which I'm not really familiar with the Tang Dynasty, but it was one of the major dynasties in China. And then to skip on over to Zen Buddhism in Japan, you know, they helped raise bunches of lots of money for warplanes. They helped. They were very big with these samurais, which is kind of odd that Buddhism would be associated with war, since they are such a loving and compassionate people. But sometimes it's almost like you have to do what you have to do to get by in order to survive. I'm not saying that you know, what they did was right. In my view, if I was in that position, I don't think I could have done it. I think I will go ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
I think one of the important contributions of Judaism is the story of, in the Old Testament, of how the Jews escaped slavery in Egypt, the story of Exodus, and the role of Moses serving as the instrument of God and going to the Pharaoh and saying, "Let my people go." And when Pharaoh decided he didn't want to let people go, he was visited with a series of plagues that convinced him otherwise. And the reason this account, I think, has been so important over the centuries is that it was a story of emancipation for oppressed peoples all over the world that they could take heart from. And it played a particularly important role in the United States, because it was the one area of freedom that the slaves had in America was that they were taught Protestantism, and they were taught about the Exodus story, and they took heart from that. In a sense, religion was on their side against the institution of slavery, and this was brought to a head in the Civil Rights era in the 1950s and 1960s, led by the Reverend Martin Luther King, when due to the various protests by the people, black people of the South, and the action of the Kennedy administration, the LBJ administration, and the Supreme Court, the civil rights legislation was passed, and black people gained the right to vote and the right to participate in the political process. And while we still have a long way to go in that regard, I think, I don't want you to understand, I'm not saying that the Jewish people take credit for that, because we don't. I'm just saying that the Exodus story provided them with support and encouragement and a model of action that they could use against white people, because white people also believed in the Old Testament and the Exodus story, and they were as familiar with it as Jews were, and they knew that they were on the wrong side of history, and that greatly helped the civil rights movement.
Could I add just a little bit more? What I failed to say, and Dr. Schaefer reminds me of that, is that while Presbyterians have been on different sides of issues, as he would say, the right side sometimes and the wrong side of history, there were many Presbyterians in the South that were in favor of slavery, and Presbyterians in the North that were against slavery in the 1800s. But as we moved into the 20th century and the 21st century, Presbyterians have worked with people of all religions and of no religions to hold up exactly what he was talking about. That there are contributions from all of our religious traditions which make for peace and increased understanding and civil rights at every level of society, and how important that is.
Next question? Not yet.
Would any students like to ask their question?
I think Michael's passionate.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's okay. Michael, we'll come to you. I know you're excited. That's a good thing.
Hi, I'm Brianna, and my question is, what is a conflict that your religion has experienced or is experiencing today, and what do you believe would solve this problem?
I'll speak. Reform Judaism. Judaism, the Jewish people in the United States, as I'm sure you know, represent a small minority of the population. There are about 5 million Jewish people in the United States. And one of the most serious problems that we face is the problem of intermarriage. Roughly half of the marriages by Jewish people are to people who are not Jewish. And if that trend continues, we're faced with the matter of survival. And the way that at least Reform Judaism has attempted to deal with this is to try to reach out to interfaith couples and interest them in joining the congregation and raising their children Jewish. And my congregation Beth Shalom, over on Coulter Avenue, we have somewhere between 35 to 40% of our families are interfaith families. And that's a very large proportion. And we are very, very grateful to the non-Jewish parents for allowing their children to be raised Jewish, because that in some cases is a very considerable sacrifice, as you might imagine. And so we're doing everything we can to reach out to these interfaith couples and trying to retain their interest in Judaism and encourage them in every way possible to raise their children Jewish and to make them feel welcome and wanted in the Reformed congregations. But this undoubtedly, this is a problem that will go on for many, many years, and I can't predict what the outcome will be.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can I go ahead and say something if that's okay? All right. Here's the thing. We're obviously pressed for time. There are a lot of questions possibly buzzing around in your head. So what I'd like to do is I'd like the last 5 minutes to be unstructured, so that you can sit next to these representatives, ask them whatever question is really on your mind. And Michael, I know that question that you're wanting to ask is really setting for you. So this is going to give everybody an opportunity in the classroom to kind of ask a little bit of these representatives of the religion. So if you could, I don't want to say that you have to sit anywhere. I don't want to say that you have to do anything. We're just going to allow for discussion. And if you could, you're not speaking unless you're asking a question to these separate leaders, if that makes sense. Okay? So we're not having personal conversations. What you're doing is you're asking the question, and anybody around there is listening to that answer. Does that make sense? Are there? Yes, sir.
I have two small questions.
Okay. I want you to be able to ask them to them individually, because we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately. Okay. Maybe we can schedule this for another time, but right now we want everybody to have that opportunity. Does that make sense? Okay. So who are you going to ask this to? Can you go over there and ask her if that's all right, please? Okay, awesome. All right, so you're in the area of a person that you're interested in asking that question. You may move there. Guys over here, you can find a place to sit and go ahead, okay?